No, it's the first week of a new job also, so...
Yeah. It's exciting.
We'll see if this job's any good, if I stay there, but I guess it's actually happening because he did just finally email me.
Yeah, I think back every time I ever switched jobs, I just went to work Monday, like literally left on Friday, Monday, different office, new company.
I always took a break every time.
I've never taken a break, and I've regretted it every time. If I ever change jobs again, I'm taking a fucking break.
Well, I had all those PTOs stored up, so even if I had never taken a break in the past, even though I did, always in the past, I would have this time, because no way am I throwing away, like, I think I had 17 days PTO that turned into money, right? It's like...
I don't need money. I got plenty of money. I don't need more money.
But you know when I'm not working next week? Friday.
No.
Or the Friday after that.
Boo. Actually, I shouldn't boo. You've got the dream. I hope it works out.
Well, it's not the dream, but it's 20% of the way there.
It's like 20. I mean, the dream is you go to the beach and just stay, but... All right. I'm going to hit record. I have hit record.
I also hit record and it's working.
All right. And I got the backup audio here in case we had a weird problem. So we're good to go. Just move that little OBS over there. All right. It's Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about streaming games to devices, not like on Twitch. So, there won't be any Geek Nights next week because, at least me and a bunch of our friends are just going to the beach. Private beach house.
I would be going to the beach, but next week, I haven't worked for the past month.
Oh, I am well aware. I think you have pointed out that you are not working literally every time I've interacted with you via any medium for this entire period, and I can't blame you because I would do the same.
Tomorrow, I'm going to the beach. Just what? Because who's going to stop me? I don't have a job to go to.
Tomorrow it looks like a good beach day too.
So I'm just going to wake my ass up early and go to the beach tomorrow all day.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, next week, starting Monday, my new job will begin. So I guess I'm not going to go to the beach then. However, on Friday next week, I won't be working, or the Friday after that, because that's the only reason I really accepted this job is because I'm never going to work on Friday. That's what they said. So...
You know, it's just like you said before, it's a situation where that's what you wanted. Like, you can't say no to an offer like that. If someone's like, here's exactly what you asked for, we'll do it. Like, all right.
Yeah, it's like, imagine going to negotiate with someone and they're like, all right, what do you want? And I'm like, I will sell you this ballpoint pen for $1 billion. They're like, all right. You're like, oh, what? I guess I'm giving you the ballpoint pen. It's like, I don't want to give it to you. That's why I said some ridiculous number. I kind of need the pen. It's my last pen.
Yeah.
I was planning to just walk away from this conversation with pen in hand.
Well, just like recruiters.
But you said yes to the billion, so I guess I can't change my mind now. I already...
Yeah, like recruiters bother me all the time, so I usually give some like, my minimum salary is like $500,000. Like, I just say something to make them go away. But if someone says, all right, let's keep talking, I do keep talking to them at least a little bit further until I find out what evil shit they're up to, and then I tell them to pound sand. But
meanwhile, I turned off all LinkedIn like settings to like, I have job, don't leave me alone.
I have never changed my LinkedIn away from don't bother me. It's never mattered. It's never changed anything.
Before I even went to day one at the new job, I've already got 2 recruiters. They stopped for a little while, like a couple weeks. I already got 2, like, hey, but at least now I have a new line for recruiters, which is now when I go and I'm like, I'd really like to work 4 days a week.
Now, Daddy, 3. I really like to work 3 days a week.
That's right.
3? Well, I already work.
Anytime a recruiter talks to me, I can be like, look, can I work 3 days a week? They're going to be like, 3? I'd be like, right now I work 4. I work 4 now. My current job, 4. So you want to pull me away? 3.
And you know what?
A week.
Some advice, if you have a perk like that or a high enough salary, like, Usually you don't want to tell a company that like you're talking to apply to, or that's recruiting
I'd never
you.
tell them the money, I would never tell them a number ever. When people ask about money, the line I've been using that has worked well is, I live in a New York City apartment. I can see the skyline out the window. Right? You figure it out. How much?
Usually what I say lately is, X is my minimum salary to like have a conversation. Like if it's not that, that's the bare minimum I would accept. If that is not even on the table, like let's just end this right now.
I don't like to tell a number.
That's I make that number pretty high.
Yeah, but you can get into trouble, right? If their number was like way, way, way higher than that.
Yeah, but that number is high enough to where if it was higher than that, it actually wouldn't affect me.
Well, consider this, right? Let's pretend in a different universe, right, where I had been better at school, and I instead of playing BattleTech in the basement, I studied more computer science. Right?
Yeah, miserable life.
And at the time at college where we graduated, and there were like those little Google quizzes lying around in the cafe at the college, right? And I had actually been able to do that little Google quiz, and I had gotten a job at Google as a computer programmer of some kind or software engineer in the year 2005. And let's pretend that I had stayed at Google from the year 2005 to the year 2022, and for some reason never quit, even though there were many occasions on which my morality would have forced me to quit. But putting all that aside, if that universe happened, by all information I have available,
you would be making 600 to 800K probably right now.
You're
minimum.
Way off.
Well, minimum.
You're way off. No. The numbers that I have seen suggest that if you are a software engineer at Google with, how many years is that? 17 years?
Oh, yeah, I guess 17. God, we've been out of college.
17 years of tenure.
We've been out of college for a fucking...
I would be making $1.7 or $8 million a year.
Yeah, I did realize I recently was looking at what the actual compensation structure is for companies like Amazon and Google for some comparative research. And yeah, it's like a product manager, like what I do now, I could like that equivalent at those kinds of companies pays between 700 and 2.1 million.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it's gaming day, and you're going to the beach tomorrow, and I'm going to the beach next week. So today and most likely Thursday will be the last episodes of Geek Nights for a little bit until Scott gets situated in a new job. Until
we'll be able to do a lot of Geek Nights starting a few weeks from now.
Yeah,
right? two weeks away because I
think Geek Nights is pretty much going to be back to normal. We're past all the known disruptions. So. In the news, I can't ignore it. Got to talk about it at least briefly. But there were several mass shootings in America over the weekend. But one of them was extremely, crazy right-wing Nazi incel 8chan guy with a sniper rifle, basically. But the news I have, because the real news, I'll talk about all that in detail. And if you really want to know the details, even though it's not going to affect your life that much, you can go read about it. But the news I have is that we're in sort of an interesting situation now as people who live in America, in that our Supreme Court, as you may know, has basically ended New York State's gun laws, the laws that are the primary reason there's very few gun deaths in this state compared to like every other state that doesn't have these laws. And the Supreme Court just ended them all. So what New York responded with...
Some of them.
Well, it ended the big one. So they basically said you got to give anyone who wants to carry a handgun the right to carry a handgun. You can't require them to have a good reason to have one. So what New York did...
It has to be a certain kind of reason.
You don't...
Generalizing dramatically. It's a very specific thing.
You cannot require any reason now. You must give a permit unless there is a specific item on an enumerated list that means you should not give that person. It's permissive as opposed to restrictive, is basically how this is going to shake down. New York responded by rapidly passing a law, and we're going to have a referendum and a state constitution amendment, basically adding 1 million new gun restrictions to basically prevent the outcomes of the Supreme Court decision and go even further, like some of the biggest gun restrictions this state has ever passed, and basically daring red states and the Supreme Court to do anything about it. New Jersey now, I think this news is today, basically is now doing the exact same thing. And we're seeing a wave where all the blue states are now passing massive new gun controls because it's literally impossible to do anything at the federal level. And we're getting to a situation, it's not a civil war, but it's something that I've seen a lot of people referring to as a cold civil war, in that we're going to see, very likely over the next decade in America, a radical divergence between the laws in blue states versus the laws in red states. And it's just going to keep escalating.
That's what Republicans wanted. They kept yelling about states' rights. It's like, that's what they wanted since the actual Civil War, right? Is, they weren't the Confederates, for all of their evil ways, they weren't trying to conquer the Union, right?
They just wanted their particularly awful practice to be permanently legal.
They would have been happy to keep being evil slave-holding people down south and let the North do whatever the North was going to do. So today, those same people are perfectly happy to, let, where they live do that their way, and then, where we live do our way. But of course, if they have the opportunity to make someone else do their way, right, they'll do that too.
Well, I mean, it's a little simplistic, because they did aggressively force northern states and non-slaveholding states to protect slave rights, and they actually aggressively, bleeding Kansas and all the skirmishes.
They wanted us to return slaves that had run away from.
Well, they also wanted to make sure that every new state was a slave state.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of other stuff going on, but basically, because Reconstruction failed, that never ended, and here we are again. We've got all the blue states banding together to pass massive gun restrictions, massive abortion protections, birth control protections, gay marriage protections, everything. Meanwhile, red states are aggressively doing the exact opposite as fast as possible, and they're going to try to use the Supreme Court to undo all these new laws that the blue states are passing. And all I want to say is, pay attention to the first time one of these blue states, or one of these compacts of blue states, refuses to follow one of these things that the Supreme Court does. Because at that moment, America is on a very different trajectory.
Oh, the Supreme Court has been refused before.
It has. And here's hoping that we can fix the Supreme Court in some fashion. But to get away from that into gaming news, because it is Tuesday and we skipped a few Geek Nights and everything, I saw you were playing a game called Nobody Saves the World.
Yeah, there's a Steam sale going on right now, because it's, the holiday in the United States. If you're in another country, I don't know if it's a holiday for you. Canada, your holiday's pretty close. Like, it's July 1st, right? Canada Day, whatever. I think. I might be wrong on that. But anyway, so Steam has a big summer sale around now, and I didn't have to go to work. So given that, it wasn't a day to go to the beach, I bought a Steam game and, followed my policy of buy, install, immediately play, right? So I saw this game on there called Nobody Saves the World, and I said, that looks like a little, sort of Robotron shooty action RPG kind of deal, and it's highly rated, and I watched a little video for a second, and I'm like, all right, looks cute. I'll try that for, $20 out of 25 total. And I tried it, and sure enough, it's an action RPG, game where you level up, you kill guys, they drop gold, you pick it up, right? You move around and you attack or shoot in 4 directions based on, whatever, right? It's got cute characters, cute story, nice art, nice calm music. The music actually is kind of, it's not like music you would play like at a soundtrack on purpose, but it's sort of like in the background. It's like good job background music. But the thing about this game that's worth talking about that is significant is the way that they have turned the systems on their head, right? If you think about the normal, action RPG systems, right? The Diablo system would be like, the model, right? You pick a class. That is your class. You have stats. Those are your stats. You gain abilities as you level up and equipment as you level up, and you choose them, and you're making a build. This is your build. You are the wand wizard. You shoot shit with wands. That is what you do. You are the necromancer. You summon skeletons. That is what you do, and you do it the whole game, and you just get better at doing that one thing, right? You polish and sharpen that one pointy stick as sharp as you can make it, and that's how you play those games. And I think every grindy level up action RPG I've ever played, almost all of them, follows that kind of system, right? This game does not do that. What this game does, Nobody Saves the World, is you start out as nobody, literally like this white humanoid creature that has amnesia, like it's nobody. And you have one attack, which is slap. And you kill some bad guys, and you unlock, right, rat. And now you can freely, at will, at any time, freely transform from nobody into rat, or vice versa. It would be like in Diablo if you could just change your class instantly, like necromancer, wizard, fighter, just whenever the hell you wanted. Like you could like swing a sword, turn into a wizard, shoot some wands, turn into a necromancer, raise a skeleton, turn back into a warrior, right? Instantly, right? So, and as you play with each individual, you unlock these different classes in sort of like a tech chart. And at the top, of course, is the dragon, right? Which I haven't gotten yet. And with each of the different, classes, creatures, transformations, there are quests to go on. And the quests are specific to the class, right? There are general quests that sort of level you up as a whole, but those are boring. But each class has specific class quests. Like for the rat, it's like, oh, you're the rat? Okay. Kill 10 enemies with the rat's bite attack. Okay, now kill 20 enemies with the rat's other attack. And then you do those, and when you do those things, the rat specifically levels up from like F to D to C to
You know what that's a little bit like? The weapons in Secret of Mana.
Yes, exactly. And however, once you get to like B rank, so let's say you get the rat to B rank, right? Well, what happens now, once you get a high enough rank, you unlock more ability slots, more abilities, and you can actually import abilities from other that you've unlocked on other classes to sort of mix and match. So you can have a rat do the wizard's, magic attack. You could assign that to like button X or Y or whatever.
Kind of like Final Fantasy 5.
It's like the rat's normal attack is always going to be the rat's bite. It's never going to change.
Yeah.
And the rat's basic attack, that bite, you can't move that attack onto anyone else, right? Because that's the rat, So there's always a reason to transform. But the other 3 attacks on the 3 other buttons, you can import or export those from the other classes as long as you've unlocked them and leveled them up sufficiently. And the game will force you, right, to do combinations on purpose. For example, like there was a class, I was someone else, I forget who I was, and it was like, oh, you want to level up the knight or something? I forget which one. Kill 10 enemies with the rat's, attack. And it's like, what? It's like it forces you to do a specific combination to get, ahead, right? It'll be like, there's 4 different attack types. There's like, bludgeoning, piercing, magic, and dark, I guess, poison. And like certain enemies will have like a shield on them so that you can only damage them with the right type of attack. And so like, let's say you're the magician. Most of the magician's attacks are like the magic type. But one of the quests for the magician will be like, pierce the 10 enemies with the piercing thing, and it forces you to get a piercing ability from another class, import it to the magician, find enemies who are vulnerable to that, and use it on them in order to level up the magician to the next rank, so then you could helpfully unlock whatever's beyond the magician, the dragon or the monk or whoever else is up there, right? So as you play the game, and there's different situations in the game, like, oh crap, I'm in a water level, I better turn into the mermaid or the turtle, right, to go in the water. Oh, I'm in a fire, it's like you're constantly changing and rebuilding and reconfiguring, and you have to level up fucking everybody, because even if you're not going to use that character, you have to get their abilities to import to another character. And it's like you're forced to play everybody. You can't just focus in on your one deal, your one build, and level it up, and that's it. You have
thinking back to what Dr. Chaos. You got to play all the family members to beat that game.
You have to play the whole game. You're thinking about Legacy of the Wizard?
Yeah, Legacy of the Wizard.
You don't have to play all the characters to beat that, really.
I mean, I did see a speed run where you can. Anyway.
Yeah, speedruns get. But anyway, the point is, you sort of have to, and it's like as the game goes on, there's situations where you have to like transform constantly, like transform, fight, transform, fight, and you're constantly strategizing and reconfiguring, right? Making different builds. It's like you go into a level and it's like, man, what's the situation here? I got these bad guys, and this water. All right, so how do I get a mermaid or a turtle or a ghost? Because the ghost can float over the water. Like, what abilities can I give them to deal with this level? I guess maybe I'll need to use 2 or 3 guys and switch between them to get through this level, right? And it's like, if you get it wrong, you just get killed because it can't even hurt anybody. So that, it's like, it makes it fun to play. It keeps it interesting. And it's like there are situations where like, you can't, you're grinding, but you're not really grinding. Like you could sit there and kill bad guys all day and never level up really that much at all, because you have to do it in the specified way according to the class that you're currently, using. Otherwise, it doesn't get you anything really. It just gets you some gold maybe, and even getting a bunch of gold doesn't help because the shop sells out of like upgrade coins, and then tough shit, right? So,
all right, so should I get it? It looks fun. It looks cute.
It does have a 2P co-op situation that I have not tried, which I think could be really fun with 2 people transforming, and that would make some of the levels easier because then you wouldn't have to individually transform so much. Like if there's 2 kinds of bad guys in one area, you could both be the right class to deal with those, and then deal with, I deal with these half of the guys and you deal with those half of the guys, and so on. So if you like an action RPG for cheap on the PC, this is a good game, I think. And it's really, I really like the forcing you to play all the characters system as opposed to the grind one character system. So,
all right, so
good design, good game design. Whoever made this,
it looks like it's on the Switch and PC, and it's on everything.
Yep.
So, in some other news. Keyforge, which has been languishing. We talked about it a while ago, where they messed up the algorithms. They couldn't make more cards.
Basically, what the rumor was, I don't know if this is confirmed, is that there was a ransomware, and I guess it's like, how could you lose a algorithm? It's like, I guess there was a ransomware, and it got their backups too. So they would have to basically rebuild the entire software from scratch or pay a ransom.
Looks like they're still cagey about it, because even this article with the new news says, quote, unfortunately, Keyforge went on an indefinite hiatus in 2021 due to unspecified issues with the underlying algorithm that created new decks for the game.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense that like you have software and the software just stops working. That's not a thing that happens, right? It's like people could fix that. The only explanation that really makes sense, I don't have any evidence that this is the case. But it was a rumor, so it might not be true.
Yep.
I don't want to get in trouble, but the only thing that makes sense is that every copy of the software and source code that they had was ransomware, and either they paid the ransom and the ransom, I don't understand why people who do ransomware actually unlock the software, right? It's like, if I was a ransomware person, I'm already evil.
All right, you gave me $100,000. Well, guess what? Give me another $1 million.
Yeah, I'd be like, thanks for the free money. Your shit's still encrypted. Deal with it. I threw away the keys. Good luck. They're good, right? Doofus. But I guess that would hurt anyone in the future trying to collect ransoms.
Yeah.
But, whatever. But the point is either they didn't pay, they paid and the ransomware people didn't unlock it, or, but yeah, they must have just lost all the software, and the only option would then be to rebuild all the software from scratch, which is a Herculean effort that would not be worth what Keyforge is going to bring in, right?
Yep.
It's like once they had the Keyforge machine set up, the level of popularity that it had attained made it worth it to carry on with the game because they were making more sets. So clearly it was economically viable.
Yep. Though, we reviewed it a while back, and it was a really cool idea, but the gameplay got pretty boring pretty quick, and I didn't even play all the decks that I own, even
it was
once.
no Netrunner. I do still have some sealed Keyforge decks, so maybe I'll keep those around. Anyway.
So long story short, the news today, actually from a couple days, like a week ago, is that Asmodee, who currently has Keyforge,
because they bought Fantasy Flight Games.
Yep. Is now selling the intellectual property rights for Keyforge to Christian Peterson, who was the founder of Fantasy Flight Games.
Right. So it's sort of like, you ran the company, you made this game, right? We're not making the game anymore. You can have the IP back. So the IP, I guess, includes the trademark, the word Keyforge, the art, the characters, the universe, the story, all that.
And now it's owned by a company called Ghost Galaxy that is, quote, developing a next-generation software engine for developing procedurally generated card games similar to the system that generated Keyforge. So basically, this company seems like it's going to double down on what can you do with this concept.
Yeah, there are at least one other company, I think, that did a similar thing, but I don't know how successful it's been. I wish someone would just do it digitally entirely. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, if there was a card game, as good, it doesn't have to be, even if it wasn't Netrunner good, that's a big ask, right? But just, as good, better than Keyforge good, with a UI that was at least as good as, like, the UI has to be good. Like, ideally Hearthstone good, but it could be Race for the Galaxy good. It could be, Root good, right? And as long as, the UI was good enough, if they were like, hey, pay $1, right? Or buy a season or something and you get this many random decks, something like that, and there were people online playing it, like, I could be convinced to play that based on circumstances, right? Yeah. I'm not entirely opposed to getting involved in that kind of game.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the only reason I eventually bounced very slowly off of Hearthstone was all the grinding for, like, any sort of real competitive play just wasn't worth keeping up with.
Or paying money.
Yep. Wasn't worth that much money to me, especially because I can just keep playing Overwatch and I don't have to pay any more money for that.
Hearthstone, I did pay some monies for it, right? For a while, because I was playing at the time, I was playing it a lot, right? So my calculation was like the amount of money that I was paying for it versus the hours.
Yeah, you don't know how the times have changed. I very seriously considered paying for a Fortnite Game Pass, Battle Pass thing for this current season. That's how much Fortnite I'm playing now.
That's all cosmetic shit, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you're the person who doesn't open loot boxes and stays with the
I actually have almost 1,000 loot boxes again in Overwatch. So, in some other news, this happens all the time, but it's worth noting because a lot of gamers, especially younger ones, seem to like forget that this is the thing that can happen. So Ubisoft, known for just shutting down its old games, has announced that they are shutting down 15 of their slightly older games multiplayer in the fall. So this fall, if you play like Anno 2070 or Assassin's Creed, like any Assassin's Creed, I guess, or there's this whole list of games that I guess had multiplayer in some fashion, the multiplayer is all going to stop working.
Yep. This is what happens when they have a multiplayer and they don't let people run their own servers.
Yep.
Right?
Or
you can still, you want to play or have just peer-to-peer multiplayer.
It's also what happens when a game's multiplayer is not like some games are designed around their multiplayer and some games have multiplayer. So they can put that on the box or like get that little bit of extra juice in the game. But not every game is Counter-Strike. And I did check before we did the show to make sure. So today, right now, go to Steam. Number one game on Steam is still fucking Counter-Strike in the year 2022 by a wide margin.
Yeah, I think, this really, from a company's perspective, right, is like maintaining servers for an online multiplayer game is work, right?
Yep.
It's a pain in the butt. It costs money.
Especially because Counter-Strike's like, I paid for Counter-Strike Go when it came out. So I could play it right now, use their servers. They're not going to get any more money out of me.
Yeah, if nobody is playing the game and there's no revenue stream for the game, and then it's like, why would you keep those servers on? It just makes sense to turn them off. It's, that's the problem is like, well, now, it's like, it's only really bad from a preservation standpoint. And like, hey, there's this, it's sort of like, I guess the first thing to ever happen to this was like the BT Zelda, right? The satellite Zelda. Right? One from Japan was like the first case of this. It's like you can't go and have that. There was an experience that someone crafted that now cannot be had. And, there are things like, there are other things like we can't experience, I don't know.
Tribes 2 as it was.
We can't experience what it was like to fight in the Second Crusade. Right? Like it happened, and now it's right. It's like they're, so it's like we can't expect to preserve every experience that has ever existed, but it's a meaningful historical thing with video games. We talk about it all the time because we are still early in the history of video games.
Yeah, I mean, some of the, many of the first video games, like the earliest ones that ever existed, were during our lifespan or not that long before us.
Yeah, like the earliest video games, like the Pongs, were like 70s, 80s deals, right?
Yep.
It's only 2022. That's like less than 50 years, really, of video games. And in terms of video games being a big cultural thing, like really not until the 90s were they big, right? So we're talking 32 years of video games, 32 years of movies. You're talking, like, think about movies. That's like movies from the 40s, maybe, not even, right? And it's like movies from the 40s are like, historical, like monumental things. So video games that come out now are gonna be as historical and monumental as movies from the 30s and 40s are now. Right? Movies from the 50s and 60s are historical and monumental, right? Masterpieces of all time, right? Hell, even some from the 90s, right?
Yep.
So, so it's like the ones being made today, even though they don't seem, a lot of them are garbage, but a lot
of movies in the 70s were garbage, right? But then there's the ones that survive.
But several video games made now are going to be all-time great masterpieces worthy of preservation. And if they have an online component that is not maintained, well, that's just kind of fucked up. That's sort of like burning half of a film reel, kind of deal.
I think what's really notable here, the two things that stand out to me, and then we'll move on because this is not the topic of the show, is that one, Counter-Strike is some fucking magic that it has remained so popular for so long, fundamentally unchanged. Like, it's tweaked. It's gone through 3 different engines. There have been tweaks to it, but the core of Counter-Strike, pretty much the same as it was when we were playing, like, beta whatever, when they added the P90 when we were at RIT.
The fundamental concept of shoot people,
two small teams. If you die, you're dead. Like, when you pseudo-realistic.
And then you wait for the next round.
Yep. Actually, I have this weird urge to play Counter-Strike now, but I only want to play with friends, not with people who are good. But,
anyway.
And two, that any game that's bigger than Counter-Strike, or even close to Counter-Strike, really has its own launcher and will never be on Steam, is the way that tends to go.
That's because if you're making a game that's multiplayer like that and is big, you're making money on some sort of transaction, DLC, subscriptions, skins, pay to win, something, right? You're not making money on selling the game itself.
What's really messing me up, though, is that
afford to be on Steam and let them take a cut. You need some sort of external payment system platform that's your own to get all the money.
Number 4 on this list is somehow still Team Fortress 2. And I almost want to join a server to see what the fuck is even happening in there.
People are playing it.
Yeah. But 2 last little newses. We'll get into the rest of the main bit. So if you were trying to get Pokemon cards and you couldn't because there was a shortage, well, guess what? The Pokemon company had a strategy to get more cards into the market, and it succeeded, and you can easily get your Pokemon cards now.
I don't know how it's not. I don't know if it's super easy, but you can get Pokemon cards now, right? They increased production dramatically, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they ever had an issue of supply chain. It's simply that they were producing the same amount of Pokemon cards they always produced.
But interest seemed to have taken off.
Demand just jumped dramatically and caught them by surprise. So it takes a while to ramp up production in response to demand, right? And now they've caught up, and I think you'll see if demand drops, which you got to imagine it will, right? Then you're going to see a glut, and because they'll take time to ramp the production down.
Good. I hate the secondary market in collectible card games. It's just exploitative.
Market too, but the Pokemon TCG is actually a decent card game.
It is.
It's the only thing I have against it is it's not the best card game, but it's decent. I'll play it. Why not? And it has some unique elements to it. Is really that it's the gambling for children is the problem, right? But at the moment when demand drops and the production is still high and the market is glutted with the Pokemon cards, I am considering going out and just buying like a whole fucking box.
If you do this, I will do it too. There's no reason not
to. Saying. Let's just go out and buy like a box of boosters, for a reasonable price. It won't be cheap, but a reasonable price, not some overpriced, right? And then with just whatever set that happens to be, will be our Pokemon cards for the rest of our lives.
I mean, for all that, I could just go home and get my Magic cards, like the revised cards.
Right here, I don't need to go home. I got all my cards.
But to give you a sense of the scale, so
I still got the Netrunner cards.
Last year, the Pokemon Company printed. So normally they print between 1 and 2 billion Pokemon cards a year. That's their normal rate.
Mm-hmm.
They've made 43 billion since the game launched.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Last year, they raised that and made almost 4 billion. This year, so far, they have printed 9 billion.
So they printed more than one Pokemon card for every person on Earth, just this year alone.
Yep. And if you
count all the Pokemon cards ever printed, basically every human being alive right at this instant could have a handful of Pokemon cards.
43.2 billion Pokemon cards have been printed to date, not counting bootlegs and counterfeits.
If you took up all the Pokemon cards ever made at this moment and made a big pile, and everyone walked up to it, each person could take like 6, 7, maybe even 8 cards off the pile. And when the last human, the only remaining human with no Pokemon cards, walks up to the pile, it'll have about 6, 7, 8 cards left in it.
Another way to put this, I'm just going to quote this article that I'll link to on Polygon. More than a quarter of all the Pokemon cards that have ever been printed were printed between 2020 and 2022.
I still have my Pokemon cards from the 90s. They're all beat up and probably not, but they're very old. They're from the first set. They're legit. I bought them.
So speaking of cards that are easy to get, because cryptocurrency is basically predictably collapsing into the pile of shit that it's always been, video cards are plentiful. You can get top tier, like 3080s at MSRP or below. They are just, you can just buy them.
Components. Let's go to the Newegg test. Newegg, video cards and video devices, desktop graphics cards. All right, let's try to get a GeForce RTX.
I'll go to Amazon and try to buy a 3090.
All right, let's get a 3080, and we're going to sort by...
All right, I just found a 3090 that's on sale. 20% off for $1,500.
Oh, we only want new ones, and we only want ones sold by Newegg, not by like third-party sellers, right? All right, $800. Isn't that the MSRP?
Pretty much.
These? Yeah.
And there are so many video cards on the market now. Like, you can just get the exact specific video card you want, MSRP or close, no problem. So everything's coming up Millhouse.
Right. I mean, I don't need one. I'm still waiting for 4080, 5080, 6080, something like that.
I was going to get a 3080, but at this point, I have to build a whole new computer by 2025 anyway, and I already put that 3080 Ti in Emily's workstation. So I think I can hold out for the 4080 and a new computer.
Yeah, 4080. Yeah, probably. Just wait until 2023, 2024.
Actually, the hard thing is what I want, but they're hard to get. So an Index VR headset that has a cable that plugs in the back of your computer and then has a junction on the end of it, and then you plug the headset into the junction. So like if you trip and fall, it'll pull out of the junction instead of fucking up
like
your computer.
Like a MagSafe deal.
Yeah. So it's hard to get just the piece of that goes on a computer, because what I want to do is just leave one of those plugged into both our computers. When Emily's not using her workstation, I could just use my Index on her computer at full frame. But I can't find that cable.
Because it would be easier to swap than swapping out like a...
Yeah, otherwise I have to climb behind and unplug like an HDMI cable and like multiple USB cables and all this crap.
You could, A, turn the computer around backwards. B, you could just get like an extension cable that has, to extend from the back to the front.
Extension cables get dicey with USB 3.
It's just got to be a good one.
Even a good one, there's trouble you can run into. You run into latency issues.
If it's a USB cable, you could just have a front USB port hooked up to the right spot on the motherboard.
Really, it's the because I have to plug the additional HDMI into the back.
Yeah, I'm saying you get an HDMI extension over to the front also.
Yeah, but that can also give you difficulties considering the high frame rate and resolution that's being pumped over that cable.
It's wires. It
is wires. I've looked into this.
It's gonna be fine.
People putting extension.
As long as it's a proper cable, it's gonna be fine.
Well, the problem is the cable length that's already on the headsets approaches the limit of what those cables are intended to handle by itself.
Every time in my life, I mean, I'm sure there are definitely instances where cables get too long and they don't work. But every time in my life, I've ever seen a sign or a warning or some sort of limit that said, this is technically how long this cable can be within spec. Much longer cables have functioned perfectly.
Yeah, depending on what you're doing. USB 2, you can get away with a lot. USB 3, I have actually run into problems before.
Well, anyway.
But at the same time, that was putting like a 20-foot extension cable somewhere, so. All right. But anyway, things of the day. America celebrates the 4th of July by blowing things up and shooting people, but figure we'll have 2 firework-related things of the day. So I'll start. It is the 10-year anniversary of one of the most notable fireworks shows that ever happened. San Diego 2012. They have
Wasn't this a thing? I'm pretty sure this was a news or a thing of the day 10 years ago. Someone check on it.
Yeah, well, if it is, then I'll eat a hat of some kind. But
okay.
So 10 years ago, on the 4th of July, the city of San Diego had some official fireworks. Whole bunch of barges, a lot like the Macy's fireworks that we have in New York. They're all synchronized with the controller. It's a fancy professional show. Due to a mistake, instead of the show going off as sequenced, the controller barge launched every single firework for the entire show in order as fast as it could. And every other barge did the exact same thing. And what happened is amazing, and I'm glad it happened at least once, but I don't know if it needs to happen again, because that was a waste of a lot of fireworks.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, awesome, but dangerous, but also entertaining. It
is like, as whatever you think this looks like, if you have never seen a picture of this or a video of this, it looks like a nuke is going off, like, in the distance. It is amazing to behold. And the best part is you see the crowd, if you watch this video, go from excited to worried to debating leaving to excited again, because it doesn't even last that long.
Yep.
We're talking 35 seconds.
The finale of a fireworks show, they tend to, they set off a lot of fireworks, right? So
yep.
It's like a big ending. And it's always sort of the same, because fireworks artists, right? People who figured this out, is like, they realize that's about the limit to where, like, if you set off more fireworks than that at once,
yep.
You kind of, it's really not.
Well, like the Macy's,
anymore,
the fancy fireworks, the Macy's ones we just watched. Of course, the finale will do layers where, like, there's a low ground effect finale, and then a higher finale, and then an even higher finale to avoid that problem.
Metal band, it's like it's only so many guitars you can have until such a point where it's just this solid noise, and it there's nothing to it.
You can only have so many backup singers screaming everything louder than everything else behind Meatloaf.
Yeah, it's like some people, there is a time and a place for that just a wall of noise nonsense. But if you actually are trying to create something discernible, then there's a limit to how much you can fill. Right?
All right, so what do you got?
So, if you don't want to set off a whole bunch of fireworks really rapidly, because there's a limit to that, why not just set off one firework that's really, really big? The biggest ever, in fact, apparently.
62 inches?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
If you ever asking yourself, what is the world's record for largest single firework? Here it is in Colorado. They made the world's largest single firework. They fired it up into the air. It exploded really big. Boom. It's a pretty standard firework. Someone in the comments did a fuck ton of math accounting for, I don't know if their math is
I mean, the first comment is, and I quote, everyone gangsta till a mushroom cloud forms.
Yeah. But there's a comment in the YouTube comments. I don't know if it's true, but, it could be true. They claim to have accounted for like the air pressure, the elevation, the temperature, etc., and thus figured out how high it went, how big the explosion was.
That seems plausible.
Yeah, it's definitely math that could be done.
So here's a question I have for you: why doesn't the Tsar Bomba count as the biggest firework? What's the difference between a firework and a bomb?
It's not a firework.
But what's the difference? Because the bomb, they didn't bomb anything in particular. They just blew it up to look at it, basically, like a firework.
Firework scatters, fissile materials, right, around, and then
so does a nuke.
And then those set on fire and create light. A bomb, it basically scatters force. Right?
No, but a nuclear bomb also scatters a big light show.
But it's not scatter. I guess someone on the internet there's definitely a semantic argument.
I'm just saying
a material difference between a firework and a bomb. There.
I'm just saying. I'd like to know what that difference is, because either this is the biggest firework ever launched, or Tsar Bomba is the biggest firework ever launched.
Anyway.
Anyway, in the meta moment, the GeekNights Book Club book, which, unless something happens, we'll do the show on Thursday this week. 9 Fox Gambit. I finished.
There's a problem in that I read this book before it was even selected as the book club book. I had finished reading it already. How much will I remember on Thursday?
Judeo, The Deuce of Gears, Woman Form and Man Form, Calendars, Utena Duels.
Yeah. I remember plenty.
Carrion Glass.
Memorable. Memorable.
I've read the entire second book. My warnings stand. Everything I've warned you about, just be ready for it if you keep reading. And I'm going to start the third book probably this weekend, because I got to know how this all ends.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, Geek Nights will very likely be live. Maybe with Scott, more likely without Scott, with at least one panel at PAX West. But we'll not be hanging out, or I will not be hanging out at the con really other than that panel. And who knows what cons we'll even be able to go to in the foreseeable future. We'll see what happens. It's still COVID land. The one thing I'll tell you is that based on looking at Twitter just now, a lot of people got COVID at Anime Expo. So, and the evidence is that the BA...
I've not paid attention at all to Anime Expo.
Anime Expo, well, it's funny because on one hand, Anime Expo was, as far as I can tell, a shit show. It was just run like crap. But that's not news. Every Anime Expo is it's always been like that. Before COVID, it was like that. But there are a lot of people claiming that they tested positive shortly after Anime Expo, having gone to it. And I would believe it based on the terrifying unmasked crowds that I saw in those images. Be judicious. I would suggest avoiding cons, even if they're masked, even if they require vaccines, for at least the near term, because it looks like the BA.5 variant of Omicron, COVID, is spreading through the U.S. like ridiculous wildfire, and people are coming down with this like crazy. So stay safe out there, and cons, at least for the next several weeks, seem like a terrible idea.
Mm-hmm.
All right, put a little marker there. You want to talk about the website or just get right to the main bit? We've already gone on for 48 minutes, so.
No, nothing else doing right now.
Yeah. All right.
And we're not gonna have shows at all, so a long show is not too bad.
So yeah,
we don't have anything to run to, right? So
yep. All right, let me just hit
a little long is okay, but I am getting hungry.
Yeah, well, we like 15 minutes is probably enough for this topic, to be honest, because we're going high level.
We'll see.
Yeah, let me just hit M for marker for Hornets. Okay. So we're not talking about like streaming your game on Twitch or YouTube or whatever. We're talking about that's game streaming on a high level, and there's a lot of directions we can take this. We might even do some other shows that zoom in on some aspects of this. When the game you are playing is running on some hardware somewhere, and you are playing that game on a different device. So this could be
the input and output devices for the game, whether they're a monitor, a gamepad, whatever, are not directly connected to the computer that is running the game software. There is some sort of network, wired or wireless link in between, as opposed to a direct, USB sort of link, right? Between the inputs and outputs and the computer that is running and rendering the frames of the game.
And this is a concept that it's interesting in computing. This is actually how basically all computers worked for a very long time. Nobody had a computer at their desk. They had a completely stupid terminal at their desk that was basically just a controller that was connected via a very long, effectively like serial cable to the actual
telephone cable, depending,
to the actual computer that was sitting somewhere else and running everything for everybody. And that's how all early computer games worked. There weren't computers you could run games on.
Oscilloscope games, I think, were.
Is an oscilloscope a computer?
We're not going to talk about that now. The point is, computers started out that way. Then we had the personal computer, where you actually had a small enough computer that you had one all to yourself, right?
Yep.
And then after that, when networking started to pick up, right, we got the idea that there would be this thin client, right? That what if, we got one really big supercomputer, right? And that way we didn't have to make so many of these personal computers that just sit around doing nothing most of the time, right? We could give everybody their own really cheap computer with a really fast network connection. And, the big computer will do all the work, right? And the little tiny computer that everyone has will just sort of receive and send over the network. And what we've arrived at in reality is some sort of combination of the two ideas, right? We have this cloud computing is huge. We have these massive, computer, warehouse places where there's shit tons of computers doing all kinds of work, right? And meanwhile, everyone has devices that often are just input and output, right? You do some hello Siri, and it sends your voice to Amazon. It processes and gets you your answers, and then the answers come back. If you don't have internet connection, it ain't gonna work.
Yep.
Right? Siri is somewhere else, right? You're effectively doing that when you say hello Siri or whoever, hello Apple, Google, same shit, right? Visit a website. All the website shit's happening somewhere else, not on your computer, right? Your computer's just inputting and outputting. But your computer, your phone, your tablet, whatever, is still really powerful because we still do some stuff locally, mainly gaming, right? The idea of doing this, network, thin client streaming of games is an old idea. I remember hearing about it as early as even the late 90s because game companies, game publishers, software companies in general wanted to do this, but Game One specifically to get away from piracy, right? They're like, well, if we don't give you the game, there's no way you can pirate it.
Yeah.
Right? It's the game. There's one copy of it. It runs on our computer. We can charge you money for it, and you can't have it. You can't modify it, whatever, right? And so as gamers, we didn't like that idea. We didn't like that idea because we wanted to pirate games. That was one major reason. We liked pirating, right? We didn't have a lot of money. We were kids. We wanted to play games. We had time. We didn't have money.
Yeah.
So we didn't like that. We also didn't like that, like, hey, well, this means how am I going to mod my games, right? How am I going to preserve backups of my games? If I pay for the game and you shut down, like we just talked about in the news, how am I going to keep playing the game? What if you change the game, Tribes 2, right? And I don't like what you changed. Now I can't play the old version of the game. What if I lose my internet connection? I can't play the game now, right? What if we have a LAN party, right? It's like, how many copies of the game do I got to buy? Everyone's got to pay you,
So this idea sort of
reasons
came and went, and for a long time, every time this idea came, it was basically impractical, and it wasn't time for it. Like, they were all sort of failures, bad ideas, done for the wrong reasons. But now, in the current era, because we're going to talk about like the current state of things a little bit, we have bandwidth, we have devices, like smartphones are extremely powerful. The ecosystem is so different now to where a bunch of forms of this are perfectly viable today. But also at the same time, companies keep trying to do some forms of this that, even if they are plausible and viable, are still just failing, which I find funny.
Yep. So the biggest failure, right, was Google Stadia. We've talked about it probably when it was new, and we ignored it because it's not worth talking about.
I found a news from February 4th, 2022, which I queued up.
Only 5 months ago.
Yeah, that basically said, according to Business Insider, Google is planning to salvage the Stadia technology and is looking for someone to buy it and or license it or use it for their own purposes.
Right. So the problem with Google Stadia is that the way it works is that the games are running on Google's computers, right? And your computer, it streams you the video of the game, right? So as long as your computer can stream 1080p video, you can see the game, right?
Yep.
It's no different than watching a 1080p stream on Netflix or anything else, right? And all you have to send to Google is the inputs from your gamepad, and there'll be some latency, obviously, but hopefully not much if your network connection is good, especially if it's wired. And
but that's a load-bearing thing you just said. A big problem with Stadia and with a lot of these services, even the in-house ones we'll talk about, like Steam Link in a minute. Most people don't have, internet got worse inside of most people's houses. We hit broadband. Everyone had wired internet that was super fast. Now we have even faster internet, but the vast majority of
depending
people...
on where you live, a lot of people... We're living in FiOS, so you got to remember, a lot of people are living in places with not as good internet connection as we have.
But even worse, even people with good internet, most people's in-house internet is Wi-Fi, and Stadia and things like it often do not work well over Wi-Fi.
Yeah, well, I mean, the newer Wi-Fis, the Wi-Fi 6s and whatnot, you get the good routers and the good radios. It is significantly improved. There is a dramatic difference, but latency is, still a thing. But the latency only really matters for some games in some scenarios, right? Even if you're playing a single-player FPS with ridiculous graphics, let's say Doom Eternal, right? It's like single player. That latency from that, assuming your bandwidth is good, it's not going to be an issue, right? For normal play. It's only the latency is at the point where it's only an issue if you've already got a network deficiency of some kind, right? Or processing deficiency of some kind. Or B, the game you're playing is a really tight, really real-time game, a fighting game, a multiplayer FPS, a competitive esport with a real-time component, right?
Yep.
A lot of games don't even have any real-time component at all. They're like a turn-based game. Civilization, you could just play Civilization stream. What does it matter?
Yeah.
It's not gonna, it'll probably work better.
I mean, I've often played games like Hearts of Iron, like all those simulation games on my laptop in the other room, streaming with Steam Link from my desktop right here.
Yep. So Stadia, technologically, the streaming of the games was fine. What wasn't fine was the way they tried to sell it, which is like you had to still buy the games.
Yeah.
Like you would get Stadia, and I know people who had Stadia from getting a free trial, and they had the free trial ran out, and then they stopped.
I don't think I've ever met anyone who paid for Stadia.
Me either. But it's like you have Stadia. Let's say you want to play a game X. You had to buy game X, like the same way you buy it on Steam. I don't know if the price was reduced, but you never actually get to download Game X. You're just buying the right to stream Game X all you want and add it to your Stadia library. And it's like, that's not going to fly, right? No one's going to do that because they could just buy Game X on Steam. Like, why would you do that? That makes no sense, right?
And it was interesting because this is a problem where the technology was adequate for the use case, but no one was interested in like how that was monetized or how it was delivered.
Yep. It could make sense for somebody who has enough computing horsepower to stream 1080p or 4K video, but does not have a video card advanced enough to render 60 FPS of full frames. Because, decoding video frames that are already rendered is less computationally intensive than actually rendering frames in real time with a GPU.
Yeah, but I think what really
$800 for a 3080, if someone else has a 3080 and you're basically just renting it, it's like that might not be a bad deal, just considering the scenario.
But it would assume that you don't need that 3080 for anything else. Every game you want to play is on Stadia. If there's even one game you want to play that's not on Stadia that needs a good video card, you had to buy the video card anyway. And that's where I think Stadia really failed in the end, was that the majority of the addressable market of a product like Stadia when it came out were people who played games already and thus either already had a gaming console or already had a gaming PC.
Or both.
Yeah, likely both.
Mm-hmm. Which all had GPUs in them, right?
Exactly.
So like, if somehow the GPU shortage carried on and or GPU factories exploded and now, we would centralize the GPUs into one place, but, maybe not everyone should have a GPU. We could talk about that, how it's sort of wasteful. People have these powerful things. They're actually really inefficient processors that use lots and lots of electricity, right? And, people have them just sitting in their computers, wasting. We manufactured that, which caused climate damage. And, it's like,
though,
talk about there.
We could also point out, there's a side argument that we hit a point where, from the 1080 onward, a 1080 even today is good enough to play literally almost every PC game on Earth.
I got a 1070 and I've never found a game that I can't play perfectly.
Yeah, you might not use the most ridiculous render settings, 4K 60 FPS locked.
I usually put it on 4K full.
You say that, but what game? Name a game that you've run at full absolute maximum quality that can be set 4K 60.
Nah, let's see. Let's go down the list.
Because I can do that with Overwatch with a 1080. That is the most GPU intensive game that I can do that with a 1080.
I mean, I haven't played that many.
Well, I'm saying this is you don't play games that push the GPUs. I know what games you play,
but I do occasionally, right? I played a bunch of Resident
but I'm saying you
games.
couldn't
PUBG that one time recently for an hour.
You did not turn PUBG to maximum render.
Yeah, I did.
Maximum every setting.
Well, my monitor's 4K, so I put it at 4K and then I maxed everything else out.
16x MSAA.
I don't know. I just there's a maximum thing.
I'm just saying.
Through the settings. I don't got time for that.
I'm just saying.
But
anyway,
notice.
The real point is that most people who are gamers who play PC games have a GPU already. And even if you have a pretty old GPU, it is good enough for 99% of all PC games that have ever been made. In fact, my HTPC, which I am going to replace soon, it is.
Mine's got a 1050. It's good forever.
Mine is a it's a 5th generation i3. And
mine's an i3. I don't know what generation though.
And it's got a GTX 450M in it.
All right, that's pretty old.
It can still play a lot of the Steam games that I would play in the living room. And you know what it can do perfectly? Steam Link to my desktop right here.
Yep.
So when I build a new HTPC, I'm not putting a GPU in it. I'm just going to get an Intel CPU because I know those can output 4K 30 to a TV. That's all I need. I'm good to go.
There's an argument to be made actually for doing the opposite, right? Is where put the massive video card in the HTPC. Now, when you play games on the monitor, right, with your gamepad and you're, having a party, it's going to be, right? And then the rest of your devices in your house, right, especially if like you're an Apple person, you can get all Macs, which can't play games.
Two problems
right?
with that. I want an HTPC that's so tiny, I literally tape it to the back of the TV that's mounted on the wall.
I mean, you can do that too, right?
Two,
Yep.
a good video card is loud as shit.
Only when it's doing the, it's 3D viz.
And three, that's not going to work for like Premiere. There's no Steam Link to make Premiere work on my workstation.
But if you're right, but I'm saying if you're an Apple person, you don't need the, right. The Apple chip can handle Premiere. The only reason the Apple computers can't play games is because the games weren't made for them. Right.
Yeah.
But Premiere is made. All those other, pretty much everything other than games is already like natively running on the M chips out there, right? All your Adobes and your like everything.
Yep.
So it's like it's an option for Apple people, right? To get one NVIDIA GPU, basically put it in a box in the house somewhere, right? And just use Steam Link to stream from it to whatever computer or iPad or iPhone you want to actually play games on.
Yep.
Right?
But basically right now, today, there's sort of two options for this. Because, arguably, like a lot of consoles are they're running the game locally, but they are tied to or restricted in some way based on computers somewhere else. But that's sort of a separate problem. But we basically either have you have a device that streams from the cloud in some fashion, or you have a gaming PC and you're using something like Steam Link to stream within your house. Those are sort of the two.
You can use Steam Link from outside your house. It works for games that aren't so intensive.
Yep.
Right? Obviously.
It requires a little bit of a moderate amount of like knowledge to set that up so it'll actually work.
Not really. You just open up the Steam app on your phone and it connects.
Yeah. That is, I have encountered people we know who struggled with that profoundly.
All right. Well, I mean, the point is, it's a really good option, I think, for not the 3D games, right?
Yeah.
But like the turn-based type games, or the much simpler games.
Look, I can use Steam Link and take a Civ turn on my fucking iPhone, and you know what? It works.
I mean, they do have Civ for iOS. It is direct. They do have a direct version.
There's no Civ for iOS that'll run on my iPhone natively.
I think there is.
I don't think it runs on the iPhone.
I'm
pretty sure it's iPad only.
It might be iPad only.
Also, even if it ran on the iPhone, wouldn't I have to pay for it?
Yeah, they do. That is one Civilization specifically. They fucked it up, and you have to buy the game like twice.
Yep. But basically, I still think
other games that might not be the issue.
Services that stream the games like Stadia did aren't really it'll be hard for them to succeed at scale. And I think it's the same problem that happened every time someone's tried this. One, the average gamer who cares enough about gaming to be playing PC games already and doesn't just have a console.
Subscription.
They do not
some gaming service.
Yeah, they do not trust services like that. Like, the only reason we trust Steam is that it's been around so long and hasn't fucked us. Mm-hmm. Nobody trusts anything else.
Right. Now, so there are some scenarios where I think this is going to work out. One scenario where it's already working out is the Xbox Game Pass thing.
Yeah.
The Xbox Game Pass, I tried to use it once and it didn't work. So I have friends who use it. And it is kind of a good deal. It's like you pay a subscription and it's sort of like Netflix. It's like there's a lot of fucking games on there that you get for a small price, right? Some of them might come and some of them might go, but it's like you just get access to this enormous game library. If you're not someone who has an enormous Steam library, it just makes economic sense to get the Xbox Game Pass, get all those fucking games. You can probably beat them in the time that they're on there. If you're actually playing lots of games, just like, I canceled Netflix and all the other streaming services because I wasn't watching anything.
Yeah.
But if you're actually playing lots of games and you get that subscription, you're going to get value from it.
Scott, imagine if that Xbox service existed when we were at RIT.
Yeah. So, I wouldn't have pirate games. There would be just so many games. I'd be like, oh, I can just play that game came out.
Yep.
I can just play it right now without paying $60.
And I think that is going to be the evolution of consoles. I think consoles are basically just purpose-built PCs effectively that will run local games, but also integrate directly and seamlessly with the streaming platform that the company like Microsoft will run for it. And I think that's going to be a big part of the gaming ecosystem. I don't think those services will capture PC gamers, though, because they will never have the coverage. I think PC gamers are primarily going to continue to be a relatively niche audience, and I think they're going to run games locally, or they're going to stream games from some other local device they own.
Oh, you got to remember, PC gamers also, include all the people who like to, go on itch.io and install all kinds of weird games and emulate things. Right?
Things that aren't on services. Stadia is not going to have, like, Quest for Glory 2 on it. You're buying that from GOG.
It could be, but you never know.
Yep.
But most people are just playing, like, the games that come out, right? And so... the consoles, the PlayStations, the Xboxes, those actually don't really make money, the hardware. They've always, had a razor blade kind of business model, from what I've heard, right? Where they make their money selling the games and the accessories and all those things. And the console is just like this lost leader to get you into the ecosystem.
Yep.
And if they can do away with the console and sell you just something really cheap that's just a video out and a network hole, right?
Yeah.
Or build it into a TV, right? Like, no more PlayStations. You just buy a PlayStation television, a television that has PlayStation, and you buy the subscription to PlayStation that you're just always paying for, and now you've got PlayStation games all the time. It's like, that's going to make them more money, I think, if they can get people to sign up for that.
Yep.
And so the last... Did you disappear?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I just didn't say anything for a second.
Okay. The last streaming game situation is also something Steam has done, which is the Steam Play Together deal, right?
Which is, I think, an underknown and underappreciated feature. If you don't know what this is and aren't using it, you're missing out.
Right. So the way it works is this, right? So I buy a game, and this game that I buy has local multiplayer, either co-op or competitive, but local multiplayer, couch multiplayer.
Yep.
But I'm alone at home because as a pandoodle, right? And no one is here to play games with me. And my friend is at home, and I paid $40 for this game, and my friend doesn't want to pay $40, which would then allow us to play network multiplayer, right? Normally both people had to buy Counter-Strike, and then you play Counter-Strike together.
Yep.
Right? You can't. The way this works, as long as the game is a couch co-op game, well, we don't really need two copies then, do we? Right? Let's say it's, I don't know, GoldenEye.
We just need to get all the inputs from all the players into the game and get the shared single video output, basically multicast to all the people who are trying to play the game.
Exactly. So I boot up the game on my computer, and effectively it uses the same streaming that Steam Link uses to show whatever's on my screen to my friend, Rim. Now, Rim sees the game, and I see the game. Even though my computer is doing all the work, Rim's computer is just playing video.
Yep.
My computer is being a Netflix with one customer, basically. All right. And Rim's gamepad, all his inputs from his gamepad, his computer is sending them to my computer, and my computer thinks two gamepads are plugged in, even though one of them is very far away over the network. And the other one is directly plugged in by USB. And now we're playing couch multiplayer, co-op, or competitive games, even though there's only one video card that has any power to it, right?
Now, some games will get into weird states and not work that well if you have more than two players, but by and large, it does just work. And that alone is extremely impressive.
If your network is good and your computer is powerful enough, at least, right? Then, like, I played Streets of Rage 4 co-op this way, and you wouldn't know it wasn't local. I challenge anyone, if I set up two computers, you wouldn't know which one was the one running it natively.
Nah.
How would you tell, right? Like, it would be some audio file, just 50-50 shot, right? Guessing which one was the one that was native. So Some other games, you might be able to tell because if the resolution is too high and the network quality isn't perfect, it'll start to like, you'll see the resolution will sort of, get a little pixely and such to maintain the frame rate. But, it's really amazing and useful technology. And it's like, yeah, that's actually a good reason for streaming games. And the final reason for streaming games, right, that sadly, I think is sort of incompatible with the reasons that no one would stream games, is that you can prevent cheating that way.
Yeah.
If the game is running on some other computer that's under no control of the players, no one can cheat. How are you going to cheat? You'd have to hack into the central system to cheat. It's not going to happen, right? You might be able to cheat with like a Quake-playing robot or something.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be able to cheat the traditional way that everyone's cheated, right? So that can ease the developer burden a lot, not having to worry about cheaters. But any game where anyone would care about real-time cheating is a game where people are going to care about the latency of the streaming. And therefore, now no one's going to play it, even though it's cheat-proof, because the only way the game is playable competitively, in which the only time anyone cares about cheating is when it's competitive.
Yeah.
So if it's not competitive, who cares if you cheat? If it is competitive, great. You stop cheating. At what cost? Latency? Now it's unplayable competitive. So what are you going to do? But that can be solved. I think there might be a solution where, like, maybe for like esports LAN parties, right? You have a local computer running the game and, you stream it out to people on the, right? And so now the latency is not much of an issue because it's so local and so fast, and yet also no cheating. It's possible. I don't know.
So yeah, it's an interesting ecosystem, and some things really haven't changed much in the last decade in this space. And I encourage you, if nothing else, to try out all the ways this works in Steam, because it mostly does just work and is honestly impressive. And once I build a new HTPC and get a new TV in the other room, that's pretty much, I'm only going to have one computer that has a video card, and everything else is just going to stream from that computer.
Yeah, I mean, as an idea that started out as, completely reviling and, no gamer would accept it under any circumstance, has now shown, that there is some merits to it that are positive for everyone. But there are still many of the demerits turned out to also be true. So, but it's going to be a thing, more and more, especially as, the technology continues to improve, making it even more feasible. So,
all right, I think that's a good point to stop.